One push, one fall. His wife survived his murder plan. Hello my new viewers, we really actually spent a lot of effort scripting this video. Encourage our team by subscribing to this video. Don't forget to like and comment. I really appreciate your willingness to watch our videos. Let's go back to the video. The mountain air was crisp that September morning, carrying the scent of pine and the promise of autumn. Isabella Watts stood at the edge of Emerald Lake Trail in Rocky Mountain National Park, Colorado, her hand shielded over her eyes as she gazed at the breathtaking vista before her. Behind her, her husband of 7 years, Joel Cooper, fiddled with his camera, supposedly trying to capture the perfect shot of the woman he'd vowed to love and cherish until death do them part. What Isabella didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that death was about to make its appearance much sooner than either of them had planned during their wedding vows. "Bella, move a little closer to the edge," Joel called out, his voice steady, almost cheerful. "The lighting's better there. Trust me, this is going to be an amazing photo." Isabella laughed, the sound echoing across the mountain range. "You and your photography obsession. We've taken like 50 pictures already." But she obliged as she always did. That was Isabella. Trusting, kind, always seeing the best in people. Especially in the man she'd married in a beautiful ceremony in Denver, the man who'd promised her the world. She took 3 steps closer to the cliff's edge, her hiking boots crunching against loose gravel. The drop below was dizzying 60 feet of sheer rock face, ending in a tangle of brush and boulders. One wrong step, one moment of carelessness, and gravity would do the rest. "Perfect," Joel whispered. But the word wasn't meant for her ears. What happens in the next 17 seconds will change everything. What happens when the person who promised to protect you becomes the greatest threat to your life? What happens when "till death do us part" transforms from a sacred vow into a literal death sentence? This is the story of one push, one fall, and one woman's impossible survival against a husband who wanted her dead. This is the story of how Isabella Watts survived what should have been the perfect murder. But let's go back to the beginning, to when Isabella first met Joel Cooper, to when love felt real and danger was just something that happened to other people in other stories. Because understanding how she ended up on that cliff edge requires understanding how deeply, how completely, she'd been deceived by the man she called her best friend, her soulmate, her everything. 3 years earlier, Isabella had been working as a pediatric nurse at Children's Hospital Colorado in Aurora when a friend convinced her to try online dating. She was 31, focused on her career, and admittedly lonely. Joel's profile caught her attention immediately. He was handsome in an approachable way, with warm brown eyes and a smile that seemed genuine. His bio mentioned hiking, traveling, and a love for old movies. He worked as a financial advisor, or so his profile claimed. Their first date was at a small Italian restaurant in downtown Denver. Joel arrived with flowers, white lilies, her favorite, though she hadn't told him that. "Lucky guess," he'd said with that devastating smile. Chapter 1. The perfect beginning. Isabella's phone buzzed with a message notification as she finished her shift at Children's Hospital Colorado. It was a typically exhausting Tuesday, 3 emergency admits, 2 crying parents she'd comforted, and a little girl with leukemia who'd finally smiled for the first time in weeks. Isabella lived for those smiles. They made the 12-hour shifts, the emotional exhaustion, and the modest salary worthwhile. "Still on for tonight?" the message read. It was from Joel C_Denver, the man she'd been messaging with for 2 weeks on the dating app her best friend Marcy had practically forced her to download. "Absolutely," she typed back, adding a smiley face before deleting it, then adding it again. At 31, she still felt like a teenager when it came to dating. 6 hours later, Isabella sat across from Joel Cooper at Marcello's, a cozy Italian restaurant in Denver's Lodo district. The soft lighting caught the golden highlights in her auburn hair, and Joel couldn't stop staring. Or maybe he was just a good actor. Either way, Isabella felt seen in a way she hadn't in years. "So, pediatric nursing," Joel said, swirling his wine glass. "That must be incredibly rewarding but emotionally brutal." "That's exactly it," Isabella replied, surprised by his insight. "How did you know?" "My sister was a nurse," Joel said smoothly. The lie came easily to him. He didn't have a sister. She used to say the same thing. They talked for 3 hours. Joel shared stories about his work as a financial advisor at a prestigious Denver firm, his childhood in Seattle, his love for hiking the Colorado trails. Isabella told him about her family in Michigan, her passion for helping children, her dream of maybe having her own someday. When Joel walked her to her car, he didn't try to kiss her. Instead, he took her hand and said, "I'd really like to see you again, Isabella. I feel like I've known you for years." And Isabella, her heart full and hopeful, believed every single word. Over the next 6 months, Joel courted Isabella with an intensity that felt like destiny. Weekend hikes through Garden of the Gardens, surprise picnics at Washington Park, late-night conversations that stretched until sunrise. He met her parents when they visited from Grand Rapids. He impressed her friends with his charm and attentiveness. What no one knew, what no one could see, was that Joel Cooper was gambling away his future at underground poker games in Aurora and online sports betting sites. The financial advisor who counseled others on fiscal responsibility was drowning in debt, sinking deeper every week. But when he looked at Isabella, he saw something else entirely. A solution. Chapter 2. The Proposal. Joel proposed on a snowy December evening at the Denver Botanic Gardens' Blossoms of Light display. He got down on one knee beneath an archway of twinkling lights, presenting a diamond ring that had cost him $8,000 he didn't have, charged to a credit card that was already maxed out. "Isabella Watts, you are the kindest, most beautiful soul I've ever known," he said, his voice cracking with what seemed like genuine emotion. "Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, Isabella said yes. She called her parents immediately, squealing with excitement. Her mother cried. Her father asked to speak with Joel, welcoming him to the family with warmth and trust. If only they had known what Joel was really thinking as he slipped that ring on Isabella's finger. This could work. This could actually work. The wedding planning consumed the next 8 months. Isabella, ever practical, wanted something modest. Joel insisted on something special. "You deserve the world," he'd say, booking a venue in downtown Denver that cost $35,000. He told Isabella his parents were contributing, another lie to add to the growing collection. During this time, Joel's gambling addiction spiraled. He was now $200,000 in debt, borrowing from dangerous people who didn't make idle threats. He'd been fired from his firm for embezzling client funds, but told Isabella he'd gotten a better opportunity at a boutique advisory firm that allowed him to work from home. The lies were stacking up, a house of cards waiting to collapse. Joel needed a plan. And then, during a sleepless night spent researching bankruptcy options, he stumbled across something else. Life insurance policies. On their wedding day, Isabella looked radiant in her lace gown, walking down the aisle of the Cathedral Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. Her smile was pure sunshine. Joel smiled too, but his mind was already calculating, already planning. During their honeymoon in Maui, while Isabella slept peacefully beside him, Joel used his phone to research life insurance companies. He needed to be smart about this. Patient. He had time. They returned to their newly rented townhouse in Boulder, a charming place with mountain views that Joel insisted they could afford. Isabella believed they could because she believed in Joel completely. She didn't know that the rent payments were already falling behind, that collection agencies were calling his phone 20 times a day. For the first year of marriage, Joel played the role of devoted husband perfectly. He cooked dinner, remembered anniversaries, left love notes on the bathroom mirror, and slowly, methodically, he set his trap. Chapter 3. The Insurance Policy. "Honey, I was thinking," Joel said one evening as they finished dinner at their kitchen table. It was a Tuesday in October, 13 months into their marriage. "With my job and your nursing career, we should probably get life insurance. Just to protect each other, you know? In case anything ever happened." Isabella looked up from her pasta, considering. "That's actually really responsible. I hadn't even thought about it." "That's why you married a financial advisor," Joel said with a wink. "I can handle all the paperwork if you want. Make it easy." "You're the best," Isabella said, reaching across to squeeze his hand. What Isabella agreed to was a modest $250,000 policy through her hospital's benefits program. What Joel actually purchased, 2 weeks later, was a $2 million policy from a private insurer, forging her signature on the documents, listing himself as the sole beneficiary. The premium was $450 a month, money Joel didn't have. He paid the first 3 months by winning big at an illegal poker game in Commerce City. A rare stroke of luck. But luck was a fickle companion, and Joel's losses continued mounting. By the spring of their second year of marriage, Joel was $380,000 in debt. Men with cold eyes had started showing up at his office, at the grocery store, places where Isabella might see them. They gave him deadlines. They made promises about what would happen if he didn't pay. Joel began researching. Late at night, using incognito browser windows, he searched, how to make a death look accidental, survival rate cliff falls, undetectable poisons, life insurance investigation murder. He cleared his search history obsessively. He was careful, methodical. This wasn't about hate. Joel didn't hate Isabella. She was lovely, kind, everything she appeared to be. But she was also worth $2 million dead. And Joel needed that money to survive. The plan began to take shape. It needed to be airtight, absolutely believable. A hiking accident seemed perfect. They went hiking all the time. Isabella was adventurous but sometimes careless, or so he could claim. Rocky Mountain National Park had dangerous trails, sheer cliff faces, and tragic accidents every year. No one would question it. Joel would be the devastated widower, collecting sympathy and insurance money in equal measure. He started suggesting more hikes, more challenging trails. He needed Isabella comfortable with heights, accustomed to pushing her limits. He bought her expensive hiking gear for her birthday, encouraged her adventurous spirit. "You're so supportive," Isabella told him one evening. "Some husbands would be worried, but you encourage me to try new things." Joel smiled and pulled her close. "I just want you to be happy, Bella. That's all I've ever wanted." The lies tasted like ash in his mouth, but he swallowed them down with practice. Chapter 4. The Anniversary Trip. Joel suggested they celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary with a special trip. "Remember how we talked about hiking Emerald Lake Trail?" he said. "Let's make it happen. Just you and me, the mountains, and no distractions." Isabella loved the idea. Work had been stressful. The hospital was understaffed, and she'd been pulling double shifts. A peaceful weekend in Rocky Mountain National Park sounded like heaven. Joel planned every detail. He studied the trail maps, identified the perfect location. A scenic overlook with a 60-foot drop, isolated enough that other hikers would be rare on a weekday morning. He checked weather forecasts obsessively. He needed clear conditions, good visibility. He didn't want nature interfering with his plan. The night before their trip, Isabella packed their bags while Joel pretended to read. His heart hammered against his ribs. Tomorrow he would do it. Tomorrow would change everything. "Are you excited?" Isabella asked, zipping up her backpack. "More than you know," Joel replied. They left Boulder at dawn, driving Joel's SUV through the winding mountain roads. Isabella dozed in the passenger seat, peaceful and trusting. Joel's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. "You can do this," he told himself. "You have to do this." They arrived at the trailhead at 8:47 a.m. The parking lot was nearly empty. Perfect. Joel had checked the trail reports. Weekday mornings in September were typically quiet. They shouldered their packs and began hiking. Isabella was chatty, pointing out wildflowers and marmots, talking about maybe trying for a baby soon. Each word was a knife in Joel's gut, but he kept his expression neutral, supportive. After 90 minutes of hiking, they reached the overlook Joel had scouted in photographs. It was even more perfect in person. A rocky outcrop with stunning views and a sheer drop to jagged rocks and brush below. "Oh my God, Joel! This is beautiful!" Isabella breathed, approaching the edge carefully. Joel's mouth went dry. This was it. The moment he'd been planning for months. He pulled out his phone, pretending to frame a photograph. "Move a little closer to the edge," he said. "The lighting's better there." And Isabella, trusting and beautiful and completely unaware, took 3 steps forward. Joel moved behind her, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure she could hear it. Chapter 5: The Push. Time seemed to slow down to individual frames like a film reel clicking through a projector. Joel stood 3 feet behind Isabella, watching her auburn hair catch the morning sunlight. She was looking out over the valley, one hand shielding her eyes, completely at peace. His hands trembled. His mouth was dry as dust. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to stop, to turn around, to find another way. But the men with cold eyes flashed through his mind. The $380,000 in debt. The threats. The $2 million that could save him. Joel took 2 steps forward, closing the distance. "Joel, we should take a selfie together." Isabella started to turn, and Joel pushed. Not a gentle nudge. Not an accident. Both palms flat against her shoulder blades. A forceful shove that sent Isabella stumbling forward. Her hiking boot caught on loose gravel. Her arms windmilled desperately, grasping at empty air. For one frozen heartbeat, their eyes met. Isabella's face transformed from confusion to terror to devastating comprehension. She knew. In that instant, she understood exactly what was happening and who was doing it to her. Joel. His name was a scream, a prayer, an accusation. And then she was falling. Joel watched her tumble over the edge, her body bouncing off the rock face once, twice, before disappearing into the brush below. The sounds, the impact of body against stone, the crashing through vegetation, seemed impossibly loud, then suddenly silent. Joel stood frozen at the edge, breathing hard. His hands shook violently. For 30 seconds he couldn't move, couldn't think, could barely breathe. Then survival instinct kicked in. He had to sell this, had to make it believable. Joel pulled out his phone, forced his hands steady, and took 3 photos of the beautiful vista. Evidence he could show police of their romantic anniversary hike. Then he walked 20 feet down the trail, sat on a boulder, and waited 15 minutes. He needed to give her time to die, needed to ensure there was no chance she'd survived. After those eternal 15 minutes, Joel jogged back to the overlook and looked down. He couldn't see Isabella's body from this angle. The brush was too thick. But there was no movement, no sound except whined through the pines. "Bella?" he called out, injecting his voice with panic. "Bella!" No response. Joel felt a sick mixture of relief and horror. He ran down the trail toward the parking lot, pulling out his phone and dialing 911. Chapter 6. The Fall. Isabella experienced the fall in fragments. Disjointed sensations and sounds that her brain couldn't quite process. The sickening lurch of gravity claiming her body. Wind rushing past her face. The sharp crack of her ribs striking stone. Her leg bending at an angle that was absolutely wrong. Then impact. Final, brutal impact. She landed on a ledge 40 feet down, not the full 60-foot drop to the bottom. Thick brush and a twisted pine tree broke her fall just enough to save her life. Barely. Her right leg was shattered, bone pushing against skin. 3 ribs were broken. Her head had struck rock, and blood poured from a gash above her eye. For uncounted minutes, Isabella existed in a space beyond pain, her body in shock. The world was tilted wrong, full of green and brown and sky that shouldn't be below her. Nothing made sense. Then the pain came crashing in like a tsunami, and Isabella screamed. The sound echoed off canyon walls, heard by no one. When the initial wave of agony receded enough for thought, Isabella's mind replayed those final moments. Joel behind her, his hands on her back, the force of the push, the look in his eyes, not accidental, not panicked, determined. He pushed me. Joel pushed me. My husband tried to kill me. The realization was almost worse than the physical pain. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of trust. All of it a lie ending in attempted murder. Isabella tried to move and gasped at the stabbing pain in her ribs. Her leg was useless, absolutely destroyed. She was bleeding from multiple wounds. She was trapped on a ledge 40 feet down a cliff face with a broken body and a husband who wanted her dead. She could die here, probably would die here, But something fierce and primal stirred in Isabella's chest. She'd spent her career fighting for children's lives, refusing to give up even when the odds were impossible. She wasn't going to die on this mountain. She wasn't going to let Joel win. Using her good leg and both arms, ignoring pain that made her vision go white, Isabella began dragging herself along the ledge toward a slope that looked less vertical. Every inch was agony. Every movement sent broken bones grinding together. But inch by inch she moved, because she was Isabella Watts and she was a survivor. Chapter 7. The Search. Joel's call to 911 was Academy Award worthy. "My wife. She fell. Please, you have to help her." His voice cracked with manufactured panic. "We were hiking Emerald Lake Trail and she got too close to the edge and, oh God, she fell. She fell so far." The dispatcher tried to calm him, asking for specific location details. Joel provided them perfectly. He'd memorized every detail. Rangers were dispatched immediately. Joel waited at the trailhead, playing the devastated husband to perfection. When the first ranger arrived, Joel was sitting on the ground, head in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I told her to be careful," he said through fake tears. "I told her not to get too close, but she wanted the perfect photo and..." He broke off, covering his face. The ranger, a weathered woman named Sarah Chun, put a hand on his shoulder. "We're going to find her. Can you show us exactly where this happened?" Joel led them up the trail, his performance never wavering. When they reached the overlook, he pointed to the edge with a trembling hand. "Right there." She was standing right there. Ranger Chun and her team peered over the edge, scanning the brush below with binoculars. No sign of a body, but that wasn't unusual. The vegetation was thick, and a fall victim could easily be hidden. "We're calling in search and rescue," Chun said. "They'll rappel down and search the entire area." "Is there..." Joel's voice broke convincingly. "Is there any chance she survived?" Ranger Chen's expression was sympathetic but realistic. "From this height, we'll do everything we can, but you should prepare yourself, Mr. Cooper." Joel nodded, tears streaming down his face. Inside, he felt almost nothing, just relief that this nightmare might finally be over. The search continued through the afternoon. News crews arrived, drawn by the tragic story of a young woman's fatal fall on her anniversary. Joel gave a brief, tearful interview. "Isabella is everything to me. Please, if anyone can help find my wife." The footage would later be played at his trial, evidence of his sociopathic ability to deceive. Chapter 8. The Survival. 14 hours after the fall, Isabella had dragged herself nearly 200 yards along the mountainside. Her body screamed with every movement. Dehydration made her tongue thick and useless. Blood loss left her dizzy and weak. But she kept moving. The slope had gradually become less steep, offering her a possible route down. Isabella used tree roots and rocks to pull herself forward, her broken leg trailing uselessly behind her. She'd fashioned a rough tourniquet from her torn jacket sleeve to slow the bleeding. As darkness fell, Isabella heard voices above, the search team. She tried to scream, but her voice came out as a hoarse croak, too weak to carry. She kept crawling through the night. Several times she nearly passed out. Once she vomited from pain and shock. But she refused to stop. At dawn, Isabella reached a hiking trail, one of the lower loop paths. She traveled almost half a mile from where she'd fallen, driven by pure will and rage. A young couple from Fort Collins, out for an early morning hike, found her collapsed on the trail. The woman screamed. The man immediately called 911. "Please," Isabella whispered through cracked lips. "My husband, Joel Cooper. He pushed me." The couple exchanged glances. They clearly thought she was delirious from her injuries. "It's okay. We're getting help," the woman said gently, removing her jacket to cover Isabella's shivering body. "No," Isabella insisted, grabbing the woman's wrist with surprising strength. "You don't understand. My husband tried to kill me. Joel Cooper. He pushed me off that cliff. Don't let him." Her voice gave out. The man spoke urgently into his phone, relaying their GPS coordinates to emergency services. 20 minutes later, A medical helicopter landed in a nearby clearing. Paramedics stabilized Isabella's leg and started fluids. As they loaded her into the helicopter, Isabella grabbed the lead paramedic's arm. "Joel Cooper," she rasped. "My husband. He tried to murder me. Tell the police." The paramedic nodded seriously. "We'll make sure they know, ma'am. Just stay with us." As the helicopter lifted off, Isabella finally allowed herself to close her eyes. She'd survived. Against impossible odds, she'd survived. Now Joel would pay for what he'd done. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. Joel was at a hotel near the park when the call came. Ranger Sarah Chen's voice was professional but carried an odd tension. "Mr. Cooper, I need you to come to Boulder Community Hospital immediately." Did you find her?" Joel asked, his stomach dropping. "Is she?" "Just come to the hospital, sir." The drive was a blur. Joel's mind raced through possibilities. They'd found her body. They wanted him to identify it. This was procedure. Everything was fine. His plan had worked. He walked into the hospital's emergency wing and was immediately surrounded by police officers. "Joel Cooper?" a detective asked, stepping forward. "I'm Detective Martinez, Boulder County Sheriff's Department. We need to ask you some questions about your wife's accident." "Of course, anything," Joel said. "Did you find Isabella? Please tell me." "Your wife is alive, Mr. Cooper." The world tilted. Joel's face went white. "What?" "Isabella Watts is in critical condition but stable. She's conscious and talking." Detective Martinez watched Joel's reaction carefully. "She says you pushed her off that cliff." That's impossible," Joel stammered, his careful facade crumbling. "She's confused. Injured. She doesn't know what she's saying." "She's very clear, Mr. Cooper. She says you deliberately pushed her, that this was attempted murder." Joel's lawyer arrived within the hour, but the damage was done. The investigation moved quickly. Detectives discovered the secret $2 million life insurance policy. Joel's gambling debts. His internet search history recovered by forensic analysts. Surveillance footage from an outdoor gear store showing him purchasing climbing rope. Rope he'd claimed he never bought. Rope that wasn't in his car or anywhere at the scene. He'd planned to stage a second accident if the first failed, they realized. Joel had been prepared to make multiple attempts on Isabella's life. The trial began 8 months later. Joel maintained his innocence, claiming Isabella was mistaken, confused by her injuries. But the evidence was overwhelming. Isabella testified from a wheelchair, her leg still in a recovery brace. She looked Joel directly in the eyes as she described the push, the betrayal, the 14-hour fight for survival. "The man I married never existed," she said quietly. "He was always a lie. I just didn't know it until he tried to kill me." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Joel Cooper was found guilty of attempted first-degree murder, fraud, and multiple other charges. The judge sentenced him to 32 years in prison. As Joel was led away in handcuffs, Isabella sat in the courtroom, surrounded by her parents and friends. Marcy held her hand tightly. "It's over," Marcy whispered. "It's finally over." Isabella nodded. The physical healing would continue. She'd had 6 surgeries on her leg and would walk with a limp forever. The emotional healing would take even longer. Trust didn't come easily anymore. But she was alive. Joel had pushed her off a cliff, expecting her to die. Instead, she'd survived, crawled to safety, and brought him to justice. Some marriages end in divorce. Some end in death. Isabella's marriage had ended with one push, one fall, and one impossible survival that revealed the truth about the man she'd loved. And in the end, against all odds, Isabella Watts had won.